the YouTube, Big G, back again with another video. It's day 20 something, I think close to 30 of the lockdown. I hope you guys are all staying safe out there. I know I'm getting cabin fever. It's great being stuck in a games room and around the house, but you know, you only can take so much of it. And yeah, getting a little bit tired of it at the moment. But anyway, going through my games collection, cleaning up, tidying up, as you've seen in some of my last videos. And I was going through one of my favorite 8-bit computers from back in the day, software collection. And that is the ZX Spectrum. Awesome little computer. Love my ZX Spectrum from back in the day. One of the first 8-bits that I owned. And I was going through the software titles, and as I was going through them, so much nostalgia from some of the specific titles that I looked at. So this video is about what are your top 3 ZX Spectrum characters, heroes, mascots that were featured in a game or a series of games. Okay, so your top 3 ZX Spectrum, and look, obviously the games are ported to 101 different other systems as well, but still, for your ZX Spectrum, what are your top 3 mascots or game characters as such? And you know, as I was going through, I put my top 3 together. Maybe a bit different to yours, maybe a little bit surprising, but let's see, maybe it's very, very similar. And remember, this is based on the games that I owned back in the day as well. So it's very subjective as well. But anyway, a lot of fun. Okay, so in number 3 place, and although it's in number 3 place, it's definitely one of my favorite games of all time. Okay, but as a game character in number 3 place, and that is Jetman. Now Jetman, he was featured on Jetpack, first game that came out from Ultimate Play the Game, you know, the Stamper Brothers, and this was in 1983, yeah, 1983 that it came out. Brilliant game, simple but executed fantastically, really, really good. And Jetman, the character himself, was done so well as well. Although I only played Jetman in the Jetpack games, he did appear in 2 other games, Lunar Jetman and I think it was Solar Jetman. I never played those, never had them, never played them. So I only played Jetman in this particular game itself. One of the first shooters that I played on the ZX Spectrum. I mean, it had a fantastic movement scrolling effect with the fire that sort of wrapped around. Although it didn't scroll and it was just a single screen, it was pulled off so well. And it ran in 16K as well. And it was also featured as one of the ROM games for the ZX Spectrum, being under 16K. Must play, must have, my number 3 spot, Jetman from the Stamper Brothers Ultimate Play the Games. Number 2 position. Now this may be, I'm sure, a lot of people's number 1 position, but let's see. And that has to be Miner Willy, that was featured in, first of all, in Manic Miner. Now Matthew Smith from Software Projects, this was his breakout game, Manic Miner. I mean, just from the start of the game, that starting screen, that sound that came out, I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. I didn't get this at first when I first had my ZX Spectrum, and that may be why it doesn't feature in my number 1 spot, because I never owned it back then. I only played it at a later stage, Manic Miner. But being a platformer, one of the best, but also a very difficult, I found it very difficult back then. It wasn't an easy game to play, it was frustrating, and it also had a lot of tongue-in-cheek. I mean, really weird stuff happening on the screen. It had that lovely, when you died, you were given the boot, you know, the boot coming down, which was done fantastically. Sound, graphics, and Miner Willy, the character, he had a hang of a lot of character built into him and in the actual game itself. And it was followed up by, Set Willy. More of the same, just as fun, just as difficult. I found these platformers so difficult back in the day that I used to get frustrated and gave up, you know, quite quickly. And Set Willy came out in, I think, 1984. And, you know, I've watched a couple of documentaries on Matthew Smith. In my mind, very sad. I mean, fame obviously didn't treat him well, got into a hang of a lot of drugs, and you know, now when you watch him on the documentaries, wow, drugs has really affected him. It's killed off far too many brain cells. But anyway, fantastic games, and Minor Willy is my number 2 spot when it comes to characters, main game characters in a Speccy game. And also based on the fact that I only played these a little bit later in the Spectrum life, because software was very, very limited back then. Now getting to my number 1 spot, and you know, this may surprise you. A lot of people don't like these games at all, but I think what swayed me was the fact that these were the only games that I had when I first owned my ZX Spectrum. And being on a farm, and you've only got these games, you played them over and over and over again. So therefore it's got a special place in my heart. And that is the Horace series. So Horace, and you know, the very first game I owned, actually these two, Horace Goes Skiing and Horace and the Spiders. These 2 games I had when I've had my ZX Spectrum for the first time. And I played these games over and over and over again. And yes, I don't recall them being that difficult. So I got a lot of gameplay out of them. You know, Horace of the Skiing, you got across the road, got your skis, came back across the road, did the skiing, which was a nice effect. But I think Hungry Horace was probably, not Hungry Horace, Horace and the Spiders was probably my favorite. And simply because I played the arcade game. It sort of reminded me of the arcade game Space something or other, where you knock the hole in the ground and the guys fall into it and so forth. And that's what I enjoyed about this. So I played Horace and the Spiders and Horace Goes Skiing a hang of a lot. And then obviously Hungry Horace as well. Now Hungry Horace I only got at a later stage, and being a Pac-Man clone for the Speccy, it wasn't such a bad Pac-Man clone for the Speccy, and there weren't that many Pac-Man clones for the Speccy, and so I played Horace, Hungry Horace as well. Now these were brought out by William Tang from Scion, I think published by Melbourne House. And the other interesting thing is that 2 of these games, I think it was Hungry Horace and Horace and the Spiders, also featured as ROMs on the ZX Spectrum. And I think also the way they actually made the character bit for Horace made a very good, in my mind, sort of a mascot for the Spectrum. I think they could have got a lot more done with the Horace series. They could have upgraded it, maybe better programming. Maybe if the Stamper brothers got a hold of Horace, you know, can you imagine what sort of games they could have done with old Horace as a main character, or even Matthew Smith as such. But otherwise, this was my number 1 character from the ZX Spectrum from back in the day. Thoroughly enjoyed the games, played them to death, but they're not the best games on the ZX Spectrum, not by a far shot. And I know there's a lot of other great mascots or characters on the ZX Spectrum, but I never had those games. I couldn't play them back in the day, so they don't have as much nostalgia for me as what the Horace series has. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And just the, you know, Horace, I mean, it just like rolls off the tongue as well. So yeah, so number 3 position has to be Jetman. Number 2 position, Minor Willy. And number 1 position, Horace, as my main mascot or characters for the ZX Spectrum from back in the day. Guys, what are yours? I'm sure there's a lot of different ones out there. Agree with me, disagree with me, put the comments down below. But otherwise, cheers from me, and remember, keep it retro.